having kids has some of the worst impact on your finances. Increased budget, increased liability, emotionally driven financial decision, and so more. And it's also the best thing that can happen in your life. To help you enjoy your new life and avoiding becoming a financial train wreck, I put together 10 tips that will help you keep everything under control. And I apply all of them to myself as a working dad. Hello everyone, this is Joran from Economia. Welcome back to the channel. Let's get started. You'll soon find out that you're going to spend a lot of time at the pediatrician because you don't know anything and you want some professional advice. We all do the same. Bills can add up very, very fast. That's why a good recommendation is to register your kid as your dependent within 30 days of birth. You can do that whether it's a state-sponsored plan or your employee plan. Very quickly, everything will be covered. You may eventually, I hope not, but eventually need to bring your kid to the hospital. This can become very, very expensive. In Japan, one day is going to cost you $300. If you're in the US, it can cost you up to $2,800 for a day. A bit less if you're living in Singapore or living in India. You multiply that by 5 for an average hospital stay, and you can see that it can become very, very expensive. That's why enrolling your kid very early on for everything will give you peace of mind. A kid can cost up to $25,000 a year, everything included. That's a lot of money. That's why you need to have a very good hold of your budget. Look at your budget, look at your expenses, look at your income, look at what you can reduce a bit because you're going to need to put money aside for the kid. Another thing is one of the two partners probably is going to have to be off work for some time, right? As the kid is coming and this kid is growing up. And a good way to know if you're financially ready is to try to live on only one of the two incomes and save the other income. And the reason I'm saying that it's in the worst cases, the parent that takes care of the kid might be off work for 2 years and you need to be prepared for that. A good thing is to have this budget, as I was mentioning, and to follow this budget month by month and making sure that you always have more money at the end of the month than less money, meaning you have to have a balanced budget. I'm putting a link down below on a budgeting tool that we put together in another video you can refer to after you finish watching this one. When you become a new parent, you are completely overwhelmed and you can oversee some benefits you're entitled to. As soon as you figure out that the baby is coming, talk to your employer, talk to your HR, talk to your ward office and see what kind of benefit they can provide you with. A welcome package, free healthcare, maybe free counseling, or free cleaning in the house. You never know what's going to come. For example, in my neighborhood, as soon as the kids are born and until they are 16, you get free healthcare and free medication. That's a big relief. Of course, we pay through our taxes, but that takes some pressure off your mind. So really check around, talk to the HR, talk to the office, and talk to other parents around. They may have good tips. Something that's not talked about, especially when you have a new kid and you're just starting as a family, is the need to prepare a will. I know it's not a funny subject. You're going to work all your life and you're working all your life to build something to leave to your kids, right? And you don't want the state or any other government entity to go and decide where your money is going to go. So having a will from the beginning, your loved one will have exactly the things that you have the way you wanted them to have. You can't do that alone. You need to talk to a professional, a lawyer or any other professional depending where you live. It's a good thing. And also you should name a guardian for your will, also for your children. If the worst comes to the worst and you disappear while they are not yet of age, someone needs to look after them. It can be a family member, but it's better if you decide rather than you let the state or any other institution decide for yourself. It's a good thing to have for peace of mind. Life is fantastic and very enjoyable, but sometimes bad things happen. If the worst comes to the worst and you disappear, you want to leave something to your loved ones. That's why it's a good idea to have life insurance, especially term life insurance. So in case of the worst, they have something, at least financially, to help them go through this very difficult period. Do it early, the younger the better, because your premium are going to be lower when you start early, and having a kid is a good time to start looking at it and talk with some professional. So you've worked all your life, you've raised your kids, maybe you already have grandkids and it's about the time to retire. and you do not want to become a burden for your kids, right? In order not to become a burden, you have to plan in advance for retirement, and you can start very early on and progressively add up. A good way to start is to starting with your employer. If you have any retirement plan with your employer, the famous 401k in the US, in Japan it's called DC, defined contribution, and I'm putting the Japanese down below. You have a lot of different plans all around, so look at those, maximize and max out the payments, and if you have matching with your employer, then it's even better, it's free money. Make sure you're taking advantage of all of those. Once you've done that, if you have extra money, you can go the extra mile, adding private retirement accounts. In the US it's called IRA, Roth IRA. In Japan you have also a couple of others, and any countries you have a lot. It's very important to look at that on the private side. Of course, if the country you live in has some state-sponsored retirement plan, Western Europe, Japan where I live, a bit in the US, again Singapore is part of the CPF, that's something you should be enrolled in and try to have as many benefits as possible. If you balance those state-sponsored and your employer, I should say, sponsored retirement plan, you should be able to build something over time, 20 years, 30 years, to have a nice retirement egg, besides your investment, obviously. So think about that as soon as the kids are coming, because they are the next generation and you don't want to burden them when you retire. As I was mentioning, having kids is probably the best thing in the world. At least that's what I think. And as they grow up, they need to be educated. You want them to know things. Education can be very expensive. Over time, there are some hobbies, additional studies, and they're gonna end up wanting to maybe learn a trade, study in university, and that can be very, very costly. Even more if they decide to go study abroad when you add all the expenses related to that. You can put money aside quite easily with a broad index fund or a broad index ETF, but I think it's a bit risky when you're talking about the education fund for your kids. So what I did is I talked to AIA in Singapore, and they have a couple of plans that I've subscribed to. You can talk to your bank or to other insurance company like AXA, Zurich, SBI, PPF. There are many others in every possible countries. Look at what makes sense for you in terms of the premium you have to pay, how long you have to pay for it, and what the return is going to be for when your kids are getting older. Usually you can get them when they are between 15 and 18. You can start withdrawing money from there. Trust me, when your kid turns 15 and says, I want to learn a trade, I want to go to university, you'd be very happy to have started putting money aside early on. If you have made it this far, thank you so much, really appreciate it. Just before we go to the last 3 tips, it would mean the world to us if you could give a like to this video, comment, or just subscribe. That would help the video to be seen by more people. Thank you very much. Let's continue. When you have a family, there is nothing more unsettling than the risk of losing your main income. And with the current economic environment, things can be a bit dicey and we see a lot of dark clouds on the horizon. So you want to be ready, especially considering that in the US, you can be laid off with just 2 weeks notice, 4 weeks in Singapore or Japan, and just 30 days in India. So you need to have the possibility of turning immediately on a dime and have money available. That's when an emergency fund makes sense. An emergency fund is money you put on the side for an emergency, as the name indicates. What you usually do to create one is every month where you receive your paycheck, you take a percentage off and you automatically wire it to a saving account that you never touch. This is for your emergencies. The idea basically is looking at your expenses for a month, and you look at your living expenses. I'm not talking about traveling, buying new clothes, just the bare minimum, your living expenses. You calculate and you see how much it is in a month. And of course, it includes food and shelter, obviously. Once you have that, you see the total, you multiply that total by 6 to 9, because usually for an emergency fund, people talk about 6 to 9 months. Some people talk about 3 months, but it's a bit short, so 6 to 9 months. And that's the amount of money you need to put aside as an emergency fund. Personally, I'm a bit of an anxious person and a bit negative, sometimes pessimistic, so I've put 12 months on the side over time. I didn't do it in a year. It took a couple of years to put it. But the earlier you start putting this money aside, the better you're going to feel, you're going to have peace of mind, and if the worst happens, you have money on the side to try to find a new job and replace the one you just lost. So emergency fund, something you should consider very quickly. We are in the season about filing taxes, and that's when you have a family, you need to talk to a tax professional. Most countries would give you tax credits if you have a family, meaning if you have kids, depending on how your family looks like. So it's very important for you to know that, to immediately register your kid or your kids as dependents. Talk to a professional and see how you should be filing your taxes. You might be able to save a lot of money on your taxes starting this year. And as a couple, you've started a family. Have you actually talked about money? Have you talked how you want to handle money with the new one? Do you want to always buy new clothes, or do you want to use recycled clothes? When I say second-hand clothes, there are a lot of families, kids are gonna really grow out of clothes, grow out of toys so quickly. Are you okay to use second-hand toys and second-hand clothes? Those talks are very important, and everything we talked about are things you should be talking with your partner as you're starting a family, as you're thinking about starting a family. That's going to give you a lot of peace of mind. That's going to reduce the stress level, because believe me, when a kid arrives, there's a lot of stress around, a lot of unknown, and it's going to be hectic. So you'd rather talk about finance early on so everybody is on the same page and you can concentrate on what's the most important, that little bottle of joy that comes completely upending your life as a couple. Nothing better than starting a family, although it's a bit frightening. With the 10 tips we just saw, you should be set on the financial side. For the rest, it's trial and error. If you need more help on budgeting, consider checking this video. If you like this content and learned something, please give it a like. Do not hesitate to subscribe for more content to come. If you have different tips to share with the rest of the community, please leave a comment below. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, goodbye.